How's everyone doing?
Yeah, I'm
We're
fired up, dude. How are you? You ready
I'm
for
great.
this Edgar Allan Poe, this Halloween edition?
We're doing a
We're in spooky
Halloween
season here.
Halloween spooky season.
You're not supposed to date these episodes, but too
This
bad.
one is we're breaking all the rules tonight.
Yeah,
And who else to better to celebrate Halloween with than the man himself, Edgar
right.
Allan Poe.
Yes, Mr. Raven.
This is a guy, the telltale heart of horror.
Mm.
This is a person who has been so influential on not only literature, poetry, but also pop culture. Like Edgar Allan Poe is beyond literature.
Oh
He's
yeah, yeah.
inspired movies and
Oh, for sure.
you
I
know
was actually watching a movie like a week ago. The called They, I
mm,
think. Some
they
just yeah, I don't know. It's like Wes Craven. I don't think he actually. I couldn't find what he had to do with it, but Wes Craven presents. They
mm,
um, and they had these like spooky uh, figures that would like come at you. These monsters in the night, and apparently Edgar Allan Poe saw them too. In his nightmares. So just
mm.
he's someone who they'll just throw in there as like
Yeah,
to kind of like count. He like just signs off on their baloney. Makes
right.
it legitimizes any kind of spooky supernatural occurrence.
Like if you have like in a movie, if you have like an old book, they're like,
Hmm.
this book belonged to Edgar Allan Poe.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Signed EAP.
Edgar Allan Poe is shorthand for like tortured, mysterious,
Right.
like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. Probably even more so. I mean, Lovecraft is probably like right up there. Like
Right.
maybe number two in that regard.
And Lovecraft, was a reader of Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if going on that, I wonder if someday Stephen King will get the same treatment, you know, in the
He
future.
could.
I don't know.
What the same treatment as like
As like Edgar Allan Poe, like it becomes almost like mythologized as like some kind of like horror figure. Because even reading into Edgar Allan Poe's biography, it's tragic and
mm,
um, sort of dark and depressing, and we kind of almost imagine that the life of the author is
synonymous with
reflects
like the
the
life of his
yes,
characters.
right, yeah, yeah.
But no, I think that could be said. Like Stephen King is definitely he I think I could see him being mythologized one day, and I also see Stephen King as sort of participating in the sort of broader Gothic tradition that a
Hmm.
lot of people kind of attribute, Edgar Allan Poe to helping really get off the ground
Yeah, yeah.
because a lot of because a lot of Stephen King's books, they it's about like old graveyards and old
Hmm.
hotels and basically Gothic, as in the idea of Gothic is the past sort of insisting upon the present, like a ghost,
Hmm.
something from the
Hmm.
past coming back and insisting upon the present. So Stephen King takes advantage of a lot of that, and that is a trope in a lot of horror movies.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And it's interesting too with Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, he's the first, from what I was reading, like largely considered the first writer to be, basically like a professional writer, more or
Mm,
less,
right,
which also, kind of contributed to his, maybe his, lack of, money as well,
right.
living solely off of his writing. But it's
The,
kind of interesting that in that same regard, he's been able to sort of he's kind of someone who's put like American writing and yeah, like kind of American creative writing like more to helps like kind of push it to the forefront. It,
right.
it I can't think of too many American writers before Edgar Allan Poe that are as influential, that are
No,
strictly writers. Yeah.
no. No, you're right, and Edgar Allan Poe writing like in the first half of the 19th century, like it kind of took some time for America to develop a bit, to
Hmm.
develop the
Hmm.
infrastructure and
Right.
the sort of
Yeah,
uh, to develop the infrastructure for there to be like sort of these professional writers.
yeah. The next one I
And
think would come to mind is maybe like Mark Twain,
right.
maybe someone like that. And then you have like Walt Whitman right after him, but in and around that same time period. I mean, Whitman obviously after Poe, but which is also funny with both of those guys. Talking about Gothic. Before the show we were talking about Southern Gothic
Mm-hmm.
writing, and this is kind of a part of like the American tradition um, as a whole. Is sort of like this kind of like Gothic sort of vein of it.
Right. That is part of the. You can definitely say that.
It's almost like kind of more of a major rather than sort of a minor, sort of vein of, American writing.
Right. Even till this day, and
Hmm.
you know that's the sort of gothic tradition that we kind of get from Edgar Allan Poe can also be sort of traced to many other writers, and also speak many other writers taking advantage of the short story, which Edgar
Right.
Allan Poe
Yeah.
also is credited with. That
Hmm.
and not only is Edgar Allan Poe credited with really popularizing and writing in the style of the short story. The short story is America's contribution to the literary canon. The
Yeah.
short story really came out of America.
He's still, one of the greats.
Yeah,
His short stories are,
fantastic.
arguably better than his poetry. Although I think he thought of himself as more of a poet, or wanted to be more of a poet.
He his
From my
first works were poetry.
right. Hmm. Hmm.
Edgar Allan Poe's first works were poetry for years, if I'm not mistaken. And so yeah, his like similar to myself, my first love is also poetry. You know, it took me a while to get into podcasting, but you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. This is actually my first love. Um,
mm,
is podcasting.
okay, okay.
Ever since I was a child,
You saw
uh,
it coming.
in the '90s, actually, I dreamed of being a podcaster.
You said one day I'll freely give my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't even have a word for it. I was like, I'm just gonna stare into like a screen. I'm
Right.
gonna talk, and people will be able to, watch and listen to it.
Well,
And
those sort of spooky occurrences are
mhm,
completely on brand with the gothic genre
right, yeah,
that Edgar Allan Poe.
that's a
I mean,
ghost. It
right?
was the ghost of the future I was experiencing then.
These sort of bending of time, and the thing is, like, the same way the past sort of would, and that's what Gothic comes from, the Gothic cathedrals, because a lot of Gothic stories would take place in Gothic cathedrals, or old ships, and old, just anywhere old mausoleums were often a good setting for Gothic, the Gothic genre. And that, and Edgar Allan, and so that kind of spooky Gothic genre, the way the past insisted on the present. Edgar Allan Poe himself has become a sort of spooky, a part of the spooky Gothic canon, just like we were talking
Hmm.
about earlier.
Right,
Edgar Allan
yeah.
Poe, he's sort of shorthand for being spooky.
Hmm. Yep, yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely.
he really helped. He's really like the first professional American writer, helped get American literature off the ground.
Yeah, yeah. I often, I'd said this to you actually earlier in the week, but I often wonder, what, Edgar Allan Poe would have been as a poet had he not been sort of, if he had maybe had lived in a little bit later time, in a
Mm,
time where there was free verse, and would those short stories and those poems, might have maybe coalesced or found some common ground. And um,
mm.
I mean, obviously, that's pure fantasy, but to think, because I feel like maybe it could have even reached even higher heights. Um,
Maybe, and it's
he
interesting. If
it's
I remember correctly, you said something similar about Sylvia Plath.
hmm, yeah,
Another
yeah,
one of the
yeah.
someone who's kind of seen as a bit creepy and a bit odd.
Yeah, yeah, she is. Yeah, she's definitely like, yeah, she's like a goth girl for sure.
maybe the and maybe there's something about that style of like gothic literature that is particularly appealing to us Americans, even in the
Mm,
modern world, with your Stephen Kings and your Cormac McCarthy's,
yeah,
like
yeah. He'd even
maybe
say with yeah, as I
even
say,
say.
even maybe white noise, perhaps even too,
Mm,
with some talking about kind of like ghosts of what is it? Ghosts of like the like consumerism almost.
mm. And ghost of
And
and in White Noise there was the ghost of sort of a past intellectualism or
mm,
intellectualizing, because the way he was the professor of Hitler studies,
right, right, yeah,
and his friend wanted to do a similar class about Elvis.
yeah, yeah, right.
Like there was this like there was almost this sense that the past, because they're in academia, so it's almost like the
Hmm.
past is sort of intruding upon their psyche.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
But
Which I
white
mean,
no
that's yeah,
Yeah, but I was just gonna say, but white noise, you sort of have, the sort it's sort of like time kind of warps as well, because the future was kind of their fear of death, the future was kind of intruding on the present a bit as well, which
mm.
you kind of get that in certain even certain kind of genres of gothic literature, like you might
Southern
have
Gothic for sure. That's what I was gonna
you
say.
have
Yeah.
characters seeing the future, being prophetic.
Yeah, and you also have things, kind of, sort of past traditions and um, sort of kind of creeping up into the present in which they're, maybe no longer applicable. They've come to the point where they're more of like a formality, and it almost makes it kind of a joke, sort of a cosmic joke.
Right, right. So yeah, and
Yeah.
so yeah, the gothic genre allows the writer to sort of play with a lot of these sort of things, and
Also,
also,
kind of, yeah.
oh, go for it, go for it.
Sorry, I was gonna say it also kind of blends, in some ways, Edgar Allan Poe's seen as, a starter or, kind of I don't want to say like a father, but, you know, kind of a progenitor of science fiction. And so, the
Okay.
way that Gothic, uh, some of these things we're saying about Gothic literature could also be said about science fiction.
Mm. Maybe in the way that like their ideas of the future sort of infect the how the story itself plays out.
Yeah, or even, their ideas of future, the maybe the biases, the ideas of the present, kind of haunt that future.
Right, right. And and yeah, they're and Edgar Allan Poe also, not popular science fiction, also the detective story.
Right. Yep.
You know,
Yeah. And mystery stories. Yeah. Detective mystery. Yeah. Yep.
right? Which is like also like but that it's kind of like a subversion of the horror trope, the
Mm,
detective sort of the way the detective sort of like something happens that people aren't sure how it happened, or
hmm. Hmm.
because a lot of those detective novels, they'll heighten the drama by making the crime seem so outrageous or income, or like how could this have happened, like
Right. Yeah.
no one knows how the
Inscrutable.
yeah, exactly. But the detective, sort of a romantic hero, has like this passion,
Mm,
this zest for life that sort of causes him to pick up on all these details, and he can sort of undo the person who was sought to get away with a crime.
yeah.
So and so and also I just like people to know that in the world of Edgar Allan Poe, even though he has the gothic side of things, he's very much a sort of like a romantic, like like in
Hmm. Hmm.
romanticism. So there's like this like overflowing of sort of like wonder, sort of like mystery, especially in like nature, or the way that sort of he exalts the past, is almost like even in gothic it's a bit where like the past intrudes on the present, but the past is still exalted. in the Gothic tradition, it's often an aristocratic past, or the past of like Romans, or King Arthur, or the Middle Ages, or something like that. Like in Romanticism, that's what they harken back to, the days of
Mm.
Rome, or the Middle Ages, like the days of chivalry and nobility, and
Yeah. Mm. Yeah,
you know,
sometimes it's kind of funny. It's like easy to forget that Edgar Allan Poe actually was like an American and like lived in like Baltimore and like New York and Philadelphia, and he's not like a European,
right.
writer. Wasn't it wasn't that actually that long ago. I mean, it kind of
Mm,
was, but
right,
he passed away in 1849, so
right.
just before the Civil War. But he feels kind of more present than that in some regards,
Mm,
and yet still kind of he feels almost farther away too.
mm, right,
Like the Cask of a Monticello, like that story could have been much older. I feel like.
right. Exactly, and the way it harkens back to the past, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like it harkens back to the aristocracy of
Amontillado, that's what it is.
yeah, it harkens back to the aristocracy of Europe, and
Mm-hmm.
Italy, and so that's sort of like like what people were about, like in the first half of the 19th century, sort of exalting that past. And I love a lot of the romantic authors. They're I think they're great. And Edgar Allan Poe was one of my first. I loved Edgar Allan Poe. Probably, I still like a lot of his poetry and short
Yeah,
stories.
yeah, yeah, for
But his
sure.
short stories, like his short stories are almost timeless. There's a
Mm-hmm.
certain
Mm-hmm.
timelessness, like that, like the Telltale Heart. You can quickly modernize that. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. And he was one. He's one of those writers that I read in like several classes. In school growing up, like about Edgar Allan Poe. Growing up, like you read him in English class. Like you'll read,
Right.
the Telltale Heart. You'll read uh, Pendulum.
Right.
Cask of
The fall
Amontillado, as I
the
said.
fall of the House of Usher.
Yep, yep.
The
Um,
Raven on the
yep,
poetic side.
yeah. The Raven. I mean, you know, that might have been his. I mean, that might be maybe the. I don't know. Is that the best poem written in the 1800s in the U.S.?
The Raven is
Maybe.
one of the best poems of all time.
Yeah. I mean, that's at that point it had to be like the most complete poem written like on American soil.
That wasn't also like a song, like, or something like that. Like that was just a pure poem. You know what I mean?
Uh,
And also there's something sort of modern about it, the way it was in a newspaper, and the way the way Edgar Allan Poe was writing for magazines. There's something sort of
mm-hmm,
modern
mm-hmm.
about that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the Raven. It's a bit long for the podcast, and it's a bit
Right.
but
I read it yesterday again just to brush up on it.
I actually I thought about reading. I didn't, but you could do a podcast on that poem.
Absolutely.
You,
Absolutely.
you could do five a little quick mini. You could do 5-10 episodes on the Raven for
And I
sure.
was gonna say I could do a quick 5 hour,
Easy, easy. 5 hours on the Raven. Let's go, dude. Easy,
that
dude.
would be that would be kind of fun to have just like a little night. Like, hey, I'm just inviting everyone over. You can no who would come to that? A
Yeah,
bunch of
probably me.
a bunch of psychos, but we're just gonna talk about the Raven.
Right. But hey, that poem, it
That'd be
made
fun
Edgar.
as hell.
That was like the height of Edgar Allan Poe's popularity,
Yeah, yeah.
and he
That
and he.
4 years before he passed away, that was
Mm,
published.
but he did, as we said earlier, he did sort of make a living as a writer.
Hmm. Yep.
You know,
Yep.
but in his time, they a lot of people actually thought of him as sort of like a literary critic.
Hmm. Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
I was a critic, wrote essays, and that's really how he kind of made his money, made his name.
right?
Yeah, he actually. I was reading about how he had actually had plans to start his own journal when he passed away,
Mm,
but
yeah.
had passed before he could publish the first issue.
Mm. And his death is also sort of mysterious. Kind of just
Right.
adds
Yep.
to his sort of
Hmm.
legend. No
Yeah.
one quite
Yeah.
knows what was affecting him the night of
I think
his.
of him like down by the docks. It's like foggy. I don't know. This guy's stumbling with a bottle in his hand. Through the
Or
night.
he and like rolling, like he's like on the ground. He's like falling. He's having sort of
Yeah.
like I imagine like coughing fits.
I'm just lying in the gutter, dying.
And but the thing is, like after his death, an enemy of his published like an obituary that was basically saying that he was a madman. And
Hmm.
that was
And,
and so the beginning of Edgar Allan Poe's sort of the conflation people have where they conflate him with the characters in his work.
hmm hmm
That tradition began in his obituary.
hmm
So
hmm
that's a
That's
little
interesting.
another little of the creepiness, that sort of oddness that sort of
Yeah.
plagued this guy.
Right. Well, in my poem as well, do a little foreshadowing. It's funny because he had like enemies at the time.
Mm,
Even in
yeah.
the poem that I'm going to be reading, he kind of calls someone out that he does not like.
Mm,
And that that's just it's just kind of funny because we don't imagine that same world, but like it almost seems kind of like Edgar Allan Poe. He's this great he's a great
right.
figure. He was petty as well.
He kind of was. He did have enemies throughout his life.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and his work was his now I mean now of course does seem universally loved or universally
Hmm.
almost accepted, but
Right.
even in sort of the next over the next 100 years, especially in the time of some of those late modernists, they there was a line drawn again between T.S. Eliot and William Carlos Williams over Edgar
Yeah,
Allan Poe's
right. That's
poetry.
true. Yeah. Huh.
T.S.
I didn't know
Eliot,
that was about that.
yeah, T.S. Eliot. That wasn't the only rift between them, but that was
Mm,
one of the rifts.
mm.
T.S. Eliot liked, or T.S. Eliot did not like Edgar Allan Poe's poetry,
Interesting.
but William Carlos Williams thought it was excellent.
Okay. All right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so like his poetry, it was sort of galvanizing at the time,
Yeah.
or not at the time, but over the next 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I know he had received a lot more kind of acclaim in Europe than he did in the U.S. for
He
his
did,
poetry.
he did.
And so yeah, his poetry was viewed
And,
favorably there.
and some people even credit the translations of his poetry in Europe as like starting some of the, sort of the some of that the Gothic, like German, like the German what do they call that German I think it's like I think it's expressionism and some of that the Gothic sort of Russian
Mm,
literature that sort of started coming out. A lot of you know fiction is sort of on the continent of Europe is sort of attributed to Edgar Allan Poe.
I didn't know that part, but yeah, I mean
Mm,
that's interesting. It's also kind of interesting that he and Robert Frost, both two guys that are a little bit more, writing in verse, had to go over to Europe to kind of get their
mm,
start before, you know, receiving any kind of fame in the U.S.
yeah, that is a bit interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah,
What do you think
but
that is?
I don't know, but to kind of go against that is that T.S. Eliot also he is an expatriate, moved to the UK
Mm-hmm.
and lived out his life there. And obviously, he didn't, as you were saying, did not like um, Edgar Allan Poe. He also didn't, write in verse. Other than
Mm.
he had a book. Oh, it's written about cats,
Oh
and
yeah, I
it's
was
like
just
for
gonna say
children.
that the one with
Yeah, well, it's
I
like
can't even
old
think of the name.
possums.
Yeah,
I'm
a book
blanking on
about
it. It's like
cats.
Old Possum something.
Tum Tugger or something. It's a cat.
Yeah, I have it actually, but you know.
But but also the guy who translated a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's poems to French, his name was Charles Baudrillard, or Charles Baudelaire,
Mm.
Charles Baudelaire,
Yeah.
and uh, and I wonder if that's where the author of A Series of Unfortunate Events
Hmm.
got the name
Hmm.
for the Baudelaire orphans.
Right, right. As soon as you said that, I thought of that because we had kind of mentioned, or you had
Right,
mentioned a series of unfortunate events before the show. So, yeah, that
right.
is interesting. I wonder. I have a feeling that could be just knowing all the other literary references through those books,
Mm-hmm.
that is probably the case, or,
Right.
very likely.
But Charles Baudelaire was like he was the one he like not only did he translate a lot of Edgar Allan poems or I yeah no Baudelaire was right. Yeah, he translated a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's poems. He would also, help popularize them in Europe and, sort of kind of was like a bit of an intermediary, if between
Mm,
Edgar Allan
mm,
Poe and the European continent.
mm.
And just like and and in the series of unfortunate events, there's several tropes of gothic literature, and all sorts of kind of odd, strange things going on. So
Right,
that
right.
definitely fits the theme.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I want to look more into that when we, when we're off the show when
And
I
and I
can. But yeah.
and I read those books as a kid, man. I love those
Oh
books.
yeah, of course. Yeah, as did I.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
great.
I still have many of them. I think I have like the first eight still.
Okay. But
Yeah,
yeah, so Edgar Allan Poe, he definitely has legs, and if there's anybody out there thinking of it, don't stop at the poetry. Go to the short stories. I mean,
yeah.
so, I
Well,
mean,
also don't stop at the short stories.
right?
Come to the
Go
read the poems too.
exactly, exactly. You know, read it all. Read it all. You can get all of his work all the works we have from him in a book. It'll be about that thick, not even that thick. Okay, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, it's like 40 poems or so.
That's all.
I
But
might be shortchanging.
that's not all his stories and everything.
No, no, no. This is just the complete poetry. No, the stories is actually kind of a
Yeah,
thicker
like with
book. Yeah.
everything he's ever written.
Hmm. Right, right. Yeah, yeah. That's a good one. No, but yeah, dude, I'm ready to get into it if you
All
are.
right, which
And
one
I
do you
think
want to
you've
go
gone
first?
first. Yeah, yeah, because I think you went first last time. So
Okay,
let's
so you tell me a bit about what you're going to do.
well, a little bit about what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read this this poem called An Enigma. Okay. All right. We got the full thing there. So I'll go ahead and start by reading this here. An Enigma by Edgar Allan Poe. Seldom we find, says Solomon Don Dunce, half an idea in the profoundest sonnet. Through all the flimsy things we see at once as easily as through a Naples bonnet. Trash of all trash, how can a lady don it? Yet heavier far than your Petrarchan stuff, all downy nonsense that the faintest puff twirls into trunk paper the while you con it. And, veritably, soul is right enough. The general Tuckermanities are errant bubbles, ephemeral and so transparent. But this is, now, you may depend upon it, stable, opaque, immortal, all by dint of the dear names that lie concealed within. That is an enigma. Um, so
An
this is
enigma.
yes, this is kind of a funny one. So it is a sonnet, and an enigma is something that is kind of a puzzle, kind of something that's sort of curious, something that doesn't readily make itself known,
Mm,
which is kind of interesting because this is a sonnet, right? This is like a very clear form, um, maybe almost like a cliche form, and I think that's kind of a little bit of the a bit of the comment here. A sonnet being 14 lines, and there are many different um, kind of variations in how the rhyming pattern, rhyming scheme goes. Um, but generally there's like the English or Shakespearean sonnets, and then there's the Italian or Petrarchan sonnets. And we have a reference to Petrarchan here in the poem. But
Mm,
also with this being an enigma, um, and this is something I learned like in researching this poem. I actually didn't know this, which I thought was kind of, it's kind of incredible. I don't know if you know this. Are you familiar with Sarah Anna Lewis? Do you
no.
know? No? Oh, okay. I wasn't before. And so Sarah Anna Lewis was a poet. Also, actually became a close family friend of Edgar Allan Poe, and actually helped uh, look over, take care of his wife when she was, at the end of her life.
Mm,
Um, but So this poem, in a way, is actually a little bit of a defense of Sarah Anna Lewis. And if we look, and I wish I should have like made, sort of a visual for this. So through the poem, on the first letter of the first line, it spells her name. So S
mm,
is the first letter of the first line, A is the first letter, or is the second letter of the second line, and then third letter of the third line, fourth letter of the fourth line, all the way down to the end of the poem spells Sarah Anna Lewis, down to
mm.
like the 14th letter of the 14th line is the S, which is
Oh wow! At the end of names.
yeah, yeah. So, also going along with the name, an enigma, it's something that, kind of a little bit of a puzzle, something that's not readily,
Mm,
apparent, to the eye.
man,
So the poem itself is that, right?
I wonder how who figured that out. How long it took them to how they
I'm not
figured
sure.
that out.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Wow.
Um, but it's also kind of funny. So, going into the poem, seldom we find, says Solomon Don Dunce, and looking up, and I kind of thought this might be the case. This name Solomon Don Dunce is like a made up name,
Right.
by all accounts. And it's also kind of funny, with Solomon, Solomon is the wisest man, right?
Right.
Solomon Don Dunce,
Don
this kind of,
Don's.
yeah, right, yeah.
Right.
Kind of, it's kind of a funny name. But kind of, making up this like, kind of wise, stupid character. Here's Edgar Allan Poe is like, you know, coming up with criticism that's like maybe not actually coming from somebody, but he's
Right.
like he's internalizing his own head. He's like, yeah, some idiot, says, has this opinion on, on sonnets, on poetry. Yeah, so
Mm,
Solomon Don Dunce says, seldom we find half an idea in the profoundest sonnet. And so, in a way, Edgar Allan Poe is like saying, like, yeah, okay, I'll take you there. Like,
mm,
we Solomon Don Dunce, this, wise, stupid person, he says you
right.
can't find any ideas and, half an idea in the profoundest sonnet. um, through all the flimsy things we see at once as easily through a Naples bonnet. Because like you've seen it all before. Maybe he's saying, with the form, like, it's kind of flowery with this rhyme scheme, the 14 lines. Yeah, we know the turn. We know all
Right.
about that. So, seeing, and I looked up like Naples bonnets too, just to get an
Mm,
idea, and they're like these kind of ridiculous hats that took kind of hold in like the 1820s.
mm,
Kind of like coming from France. They're like those like little bonnets that women would wear on their heads. It'd be like a hat, and some of them, like
mm,
the Naples versions, would have like big flared, like big like headdresses. And they're
okay.
made of like really like um, and also the Naples ones would have like a shiny silken look to them, right? So they kind of shine, but it's like really light material. They like You imagine him just like blowing off a woman's head, like, with like the lightest gale, or she'd have to
Mm,
like tie it real tight to her.
right.
So, um, kind of comparing the sonnet and, like flowery, sort of poetic language to,
Right.
these ridiculous hats that women would wear in, for fashion, you know.
Oh,
So,
okay.
uh, but, being trash of all trash, how can a lady don it? But and yet heavier far than your Petrarchan stuff. He's saying like even those hats are heavier, have maybe more weight to them than the Petrarchan stuff. That's what Solomon Don Dunce says, and Petrarchan.
Right.
He's also famous. All his Italian sonnets are all like love sonnets.
Mm,
He wrote like he like perfected, mastered the form of the sonnet. And it's like all love sonnets. So you almost imagine like he's almost like one of those he's like a pop singer, and it's all
right.
love songs. You're like, God, this. I mean, he might as well be Barry Manilow, or
Right.
something like that.
Real lover boy.
you know, yeah. This the Petrarchan stuff, this Al Donny nonsense that the faintest puff again, like it just
Right.
blow off your head, but also twirls into trunk paper. Trunk paper, because I looked this up because I was like, I had an idea, but I wanted to know. Trunk paper is referring to, imagine them taking like newspaper to line their trunks or to line, you take paper and line your trunk. Like, this
Mm,
stuff's just trash. This is like
right.
maybe Lil Wayne even, talking about it, or I'm thinking Danny Brown using your mixtape to you know, as toilet paper.
Mm, right.
Edgar Allan Poe is saying, that's what Solomon Don Dunce is saying about sonnets, right? He's saying
Right.
that it might as well be trunk paper the while you con it, which is like, saying con it is like to study it just as quickly as you read it, it could just be used as trunk paper, be thrown away in the trash. And, Edgar Allan Poe, he's agreeing with him. Yeah, sure. Here we get into the turn, and
Mm-hmm.
veritably, soul is right enough. The general Tuckermanides, and here Tuckermanides refers to a guy, Henry Tuckerman, that Edgar Allan Poe was not a fan of.
Mm.
And he he was
Not
a
afraid to make an enemy.
right, yeah. And what's funny is this is actually a poem that was published during Edgar Allan Poe's lifetime. And the editor, not sure if it was the editor or Edgar Allan Poe, uh, actually changed that line to Petrarchanides.
Mm.
Petrarchanides, yeah.
Petrarchan
But
Petrarchanides.
Pe- Petrarchanides, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But his original had Tuckermanides. Tuckermanity or Tuckerman. He was also a poet, wrote a novel, and but primarily was like an editor and wrote criticism. And so
Mm.
Edgar Allan Poe wasn't a fan of his. But he's saying, yeah, he's right enough. The general Tuckermanities are errant bubbles. They're just they have no direction, right? They're
Right.
errant bubbles,
Just
ephemeral
floating
and
away.
so yeah, and so transparent. Yeah, just
Mm.
like those flowery, flimsy Naples bonnets, you can see right through these. I know it shines on the outside, but I mean it's not. This is thin, um, but this is now. You may depend upon it, stable, opaque, immortal. He's saying like this is in almost in a way I'm thinking talking about the form itself.
Mm-hmm.
You may depend upon it, stable, opaque, immortal, and the form is immortal, but also the poem here, all by dint of the dear names that lie concealed within. So dint being like strike. Also you can think of it like dent. This poem by having Sarah Anna Lewis's name through it. Um, the form of this sonnet, by having all these great names behind it. Um, it is, regardless of what you say, and yes, some of these things are, flowery and are just trends, fashion trends that'll come and go. Uh, the thing itself, this is immortal, and also,
Mm,
it's not so easily, you can't so easily see through it as you may think.
yeah, that's why it's an enigma, a quagmire.
Yep,
You can almost get
an
lost in
enigma.
this sonnet.
Yeah. And
You know,
also kind of like, taking up, I read that it was a little bit him like defending, Sarah Anna Lewis in some of her writing that was kind of critiqued as being, not, I guess, kind of more or less basic, I guess,
mm.
not having any depth. So yeah, I mean, what do you think on that one?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is it's a great sonnet. You can get lost in it. I mean, it even has like the turn, in the right
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
place and everything. But because you it's a bit humorous. Edgar Allan
Yep.
Poe, he can be a bit
Absolutely.
humorous, and
Yep.
but it still is sort of an exaltation of the past because he's sort of defending the sonnet. He's uh
Yeah. Yeah.
he's defending the sonnet by doing it, showing that hey, it can be done well. Because any like whenever like in the Romantic period, we can hark back to Shakespeare or the Italian Peninsula. It's always that's always a thumbs up. Um,
Yeah, I mean, this really kind of showcases, sort of a humorous side, and it's also, but it also kind of shows it's not like a, it's like it's a little bit sarcastic. You could say
mm,
sardonic. It's a little bit dark, a little bit dry.
right,
Um, there's a thing about, Poe, even like in his humor, it's not like we're all having fun.
right,
You know,
right.
um, it is at the expense of someone else.
Mm,
Um, there is a fool in here, even if they are, um, imaginary,
mm,
fictitious. Solomon Don Dunce.
right.
We can
He's
kind
he's
of,
he's
yeah,
sort of a mouthpiece for for Poe to sort of a sounding board for Poe to sort of express his ideas off of, and
right, yeah, like, and it's not just, yeah, it's not just Solomon Don Dunce, but it kind of gives him an opportunity. There's this Solomon Don Dunce, and then he can also, you know, throw, shade on, Tuckerman. Say, yeah, I
right,
mean, I can see your point, Solomon Don Dunce, even though
mm,
you're an idiot,
right.
because that Tuckerman stuff, that's pretty bad, like,
And there's a lot of it. There's Tuckerman is just the
right,
archetype,
right, yeah,
the general
yeah,
Tuckermanities.
right, yeah, yeah, him and all that, you imagine Tuckerman being like the editor at a literary journal that gave some criticism or rejected a story of maybe Poe's or Sarah Anna Lewis's, and then and Edgar Allan Poe's like, You're gonna say, you don't like this? Look at all this
Right,
stuff you published over the last few years."
right. Ephemeral and so transparent. I wonder if he's like
Hmm.
saying it's sort of just like a bunch of sort of just flowery language, not really about
Yeah,
anything.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. So sort of like, high-minded, but it's empty.
right. Vapid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jack Johnson has a song it makes me think of called "Fortunate Fool," kind of
Mm,
talking about someone, you know, uh, yeah, just this fortunate fool going and getting, renting foreign movies and just not understanding them at all. But
mm.
yeah, yeah, you kind of have that. It's a little bit of an archetype,
Well, then, seldom we find half an idea in the profoundest sonnet. I guess Poe said that I can show you better than I can tell you.
right?
You know, we'll see how we'll see if there's even we'll see if there's half an idea in this sonnet. You know,
But yeah, half an idea in the profoundest sonnet too. It's almost like
the best sonnet doesn't
that.
have much to say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's also like saying that. Well, have you tried to find an idea in a sonnet? Maybe you're just trying to read the ones that are of the best form. That
Mm,
like have the sort of the best form. It's like you go to a movie and like the movies that have like the biggest budget that are like the best edited. It's
right.
like Avengers. It's stupid. And
Mm,
and then you'd be like, oh, no movies these days are mean anything. They're all superhero movies. They're all
right.
big blockbuster, dumb Hollywood films. Because in that line, or those opening two lines kind of makes me think of like in that this person is still putting like the form over maybe the function or the spirit.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can definitely see that. That's interesting. Yeah, man. An enigma. It is kind of an enigma. You
Yeah,
know.
maybe also the enigma is that maybe the best ideas avoid form.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean that's an enigma.
Yeah.
That's the one I had this week. It was a fun one to kind of dig into a little bit
Yeah. It was. It
and
was.
to
It was a.
and to learn a little bit more.
It was an interesting one from Edgar Allan Poe, and the thing about his poetry, there's a lot of his poems are long. Some of his best ones are they're long. They're a little too long for our podcast format.
Right.
So this is a good opportunity to explore maybe some of his ones that not too many people know. Even though I usually choose a popular one, and I did choose a popular one this week.
Yeah.
I chose a
Yeah.
dream within a dream, but
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, man, like that. But that poem is a great example of sort of how the people in the Romantic era they were advocating for the past. They were like, look, these sonnets are solid. I mean, the
Right.
tools of
Right.
Shakespeare, the tools of
Hmm.
some of the great Latin poets. So,
Right. Yeah, and I mean, hey, look, I've had this book for a couple years. Like, he doesn't have a ton of poems
right,
published. Like, this is an enigma is one that actually I had read years before. I'd probably I don't know how many times I've read it. Never really quite really understood it and didn't really dig into it or try to understand it. So many, he has all these other
mm,
poems that are like, catch your eye and
right,
you think of a bit more. Um, because yours is gonna take us there too. Um, takes us to dreamland or takes us to other realms or even more
mm,
fun to read like Annabelle Lee. And Enigma is when you kind of have to, at least for me, you kind of have to do a little digging and
right,
it's a little bit puzzling.
and it definitely pays off. It's a bit more.
Hmm.
It's a bit more academic. It's a bit more. It's not what people commonly think from Poe, but there is,
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
but there is a bit of a. I guess there is a bit. There's a bit of subversion in it because Solomon Dunce, he's sort of portrayed as the idiot, So,
Yeah,
but all right, a dream within a dream. I'm gonna go ahead and
yeah.
bring it up.
This is classic Poe.
This is classic Edgar Allan Poe. A dream within a dream. You know, I've known this one for a while throughout my life. I've liked it. I've liked many of Edgar Allan Poe's poems, and I just felt like this would be inappropriate. It'd be a fun one to do, a fun one to get into. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and read "A Dream Within a Dream."
Take it away.
"A Dream Within a Dream" by Edgar Allan Poe. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow. You are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few! Yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? That was Dream Within a Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. And I guess to start off with this, the first thing I kind of like to highlight would be, that we have two stanzas. I think they are, yeah, 9 lines. And
Yeah.
this one is,
Real quick, what's interesting in this book, A Dream Within a Dream, is one isn't broken into two stanzas.
it's not.
No, no.
You got it all one in there.
I wonder why that is.
Hmm.
It's just that's. I just wanted to point that out real quick because that's interesting.
Well, so when we start off, we start off with it's almost like a person saying goodbye, maybe goodbye, probably to a lover or to something they love, that like it's almost like dealing with loss. And Edgar Allan Poe, he had a lot of loss in his life. His wife died, after, obviously before he did. He was only 40 years old, so
Right. Yeah.
the the poem is dealing with loss, but also the notion, and it's a very romantic notion, that almost like, life has this dreamlike quality. There's this mystery to life, even though there's the industrial revolution and we circumnavigated the globe, there is still a bit of mystery to life. Life can still sort of throw curveballs at you and still sort of elicit these emotions from you. And in these emotional states, people come, people go. And there's almost like a dreamlike quality to it. Sometimes I've had relationships and, known people, and you think back on it, and it almost, you get all these different flashes of experience that you have with people, or have with things. And you know uh you know when they're gone, they are gone. you know so it's
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
the end of this first little part, we have the poet insisting, all that we see or seen, everything that, I see with my eyes, or anything that I sort of seem to be. If I seem to be beautiful, beauty fades away. If I'm rich, or seem to be rich, who knows my financial states? Or if I can't take the money with me, or if I'm young and athletic, that'll fade. And all that we see or seem is sort of but a dream within a dream. And the Poetry Foundation, they definitely have it broken up into these two stanzas. And this, so I'm not quite sure of which sort of uh I guess in jam it would be correct. But this second part here is sort of like a bit of a more cosmic perspective. Like in the first stanza, we have him sort of just saying goodbye to someone he loves. And you know, postulating, if hope is gone, and no matter how is it gone, it's gone. Anything that you have, you may not, almost, you don't have it permanently. But in the cosmic sense, now we have Edgar Allan Poe is sort of like exalted. This is sort of like behind the scenes what's going on in his mind. You know, where where he's standing on, like, the beach. And the beach is sort of it sort of also has its sort of place in the sort of gothic, creepy literature. Just the image of a person in a suit sort of standing on the beach, like, maybe looking out over the water, something like that. But
Mm.
Edgar Allan Poe, he always finds himself standing on shores and the beaches, in those intermediary places, and in his hands the grains of the golden sand. And The sand is gold, I imagine, because it represents time itself, you know? And in this sort of cosmic state, he's able to, perceive how many grains of sand he actually has in his hand, and how few they are, and how they're slipping through his fingers, and how he sort of can't have a tighter grasp, and he can't save one grain of sand from sort of the pitiless wave. And even but the interesting part about this poem is, from the godlike state, from the state of being this sort of cosmic creature on these sort of in this sort of cosmic environment, we end with a question. Is all that we see or seeing but a dream within a dream? And even in his sort of this sort of state where he's on the torment, where like he's on the shore with the grains of gold and sand in his hand, he still cries out to God. He's still mortal, he's still dying. But
Hmm.
even in this sort of heightened cosmic position, he postulates, is all that we see or seeing but a dream within a dream? Where when he was, sort of in the more earthly realm, what I imagine to be the more earthly realm, he insists that all that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. And when it comes to dreams, and the dreamlike nature of life, and sort of the dreamlike quality of experience that we have with relationships, I guess both's right. I guess everything is a dream within a dream. And is it a dream within a dream? Sort of the way that the poem plays upon the unknown. There's mystery in the world. There's sort of unrequited love in the world. We may not always get what we want. We may not always have everything be some sort of satisfying answer. you know
Yeah.
this is a sort of reaction to the enlightenment and rationality, and yeah, we can navigate the globe, but there's some sort of, I hear footsteps in my basement. um yeah, there's been the industrial revolution, but she still doesn't quite love me. So Edgar Allan Poe, the modern writer of America, is sort of writing in this time where technology is improving. There's all these progress and advancement, but there's still mystery to the human heart. And that's sort of what I feel like that's sort of what this poem's about. The the mortality of man, and it's sort of what it can kind of lend to the psyche, and as we kind of try to find our place in the world.
Yeah, yeah. I think this very much is a poem sort of dealing with loss and, kind of wanting to, in sort of a duality in sort of, kind of man and in our kind of human nature. Like this is someone who's, sort of crying out for God, but maybe not necessarily religious. And, um, on one hand, he's able to sort of rationalize it and say, yeah, it's all, none of this really matters. It's all a dream within a dream. And then, you know, on the other hand, I mean, looking at how, yes, it may be a dream within a dream, but no matter how hard I try, I can't quite hold on to anything, and this
Mm,
pitiless wave that keeps coming and tormenting the shore is just pulling everything into the sea regardless of what I do. Um, and so is it just a dream within a dream? I mean, is this really all it is? Um,
mm,
it's almost like the rational man sort of at odds with himself, within himself,
right.
because although he may be able to rationalize everything around him, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that he can control it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt any less, or
Mm,
um, that even if it is just a dream within a dream, it still hurts like hell. Um,
right.
and I can't seem to change it or control it. Um, and so, at the beginning, like, maybe this is him saying, because he did have to say goodbye to so many loved ones around him. And, maybe this is him, saying goodbye to a loved one and, hoping that, this the kind of maybe that maybe it's not just Christian, but this idea that you'll see each other again someday,
Mm,
and um, perhaps we may see each other again, but I'm still losing this bit of hope, this bit of this this good thing is still kind of going away. Is there any the less gone, or is it still here, or what is it that's leaving,
right, and it's in the way that he sort of these four lines here. Yet if hope has flown away in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? Sort of the he's sort of illustrating like no matter like the circumstances, if it was like maybe the sickness of a loved one or someone betraying you or whatever happened in your life that took your hope away or however how it happened, your hope is gone. you know he's sort of
Hmm.
sort of lamenting that sort of the ups and downs of life can, however they strip you, however it strips your hope away, it's gone. And in the very first line is almost like just take this kiss upon the brow. It's almost like a goodbye kiss. And in parting from you
Right.
now, thus much let me avow. He's sort of it's like saying it's like a thesis statement. You are not wrong who deemed that my days have been a dream.
It almost seems like it's almost like on someone's like sick bed or deathbed.
Right. Yeah, man. Um and I also picked this poem because it has a lot of themes from some of his other poems. There's elements of the raven in here. There's even elements of one of my favorite poems by him, Dreamland. you know
Hmm.
but in several works of Edgar Allan Poe's poetry, you can find him by the sea, by the shore.
Yeah.
He's
Annabelle
often
Lee, The
right.
Kingdom
And
by the Sea.
Annabelle Lee, Kingdom by the Sea. He's by the shore. I think he's by the shore with Lenore.
Hmm. Well,
Is
he
he?
talks about oh yeah, in Lenore. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's by the
I was
shore
gonna
with
say with
Lenore.
that. Yeah, he's also on when in the Raven, at his door, he's on the Plutonian shore.
Right.
It's kind of
And
like
that
the
and
the
that
the void, but the rift between him and the void.
right. And so this is here, when hope is gone, when hope is flown away, is it therefore the less gone? We have hope as a flying away like the raven, but the raven representing despair will not leave, you know.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we have sort of some tropes from his other poems, the despair,
Yeah,
seas, and also this
and
sort of
like yeah,
like gold and sand, the sort of like surf tormented shore. These are tropes that you can find in a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's poetry.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this is more like this reflects his poetry and like the themes and the imagery. Um, the, you see this a lot in his poetry, where my poem was kind of more reminiscent of his poetry, or his writing is more like he kind of has these two sides of like a very like logical side, and then this
Mm,
sort of supernatural side.
right, right. Yeah, he
Because
does.
even
And
his have you read about his sort of explanation for he like breaks it down like mathematically, like
explanation for
real
what?
super logically
For what explanation for what was that? I think you cut out a bit.
for the Raven.
No, no, I haven't read
People,
that.
yeah, people were like, they it was like a big hit. People wanted to know about it, know how he like came up with it, and he's like, oh, basically he was like, "Oh, it's elementary, my dear Watson,"
Oh, I
and just
did
kind of
read
like,
about that, and that's
yeah,
what that is what T.S. Eliot said. He wrote that after he wrote like our like he that was not that he sort of put the cart before the horse, so to speak.
mm,
That he wrote the Raven and then went back and wrote the quote unquote justification for it.
right, yeah, yeah. But I mean, that he just has that logical side to him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And also the supernatural side, and
Hmm.
that's evidenced in a lot of his short stories. What one of my favorites, the Cask of Amontillado. I think you and I thought about one time we should still do a modernized version of that.
Yeah.
I mean, we could be the two main characters.
Anyone out there who just maybe
Has a
makes
camera.
film, filmmakers out there, aspiring, budding filmmakers.
Right. Who do you think you would be, Montresor or Fortunato? I think it'd be funny if you
Yeah,
were Montresor and I was Fortunato. I think that might be funny. Or
maybe.
maybe do you think I don't wonder, I think I might seem more of like a Fortunato than you. I don't know. I think for some,
For, yeah, Fortunato is the one that was bricked in, right?
right.
Yeah. I think I'm a bit more gregarious than you are,
Mm,
and I think that's what you're kind of. I think I play a better sort of gregarious drunk than you.
you think so?
No,
Yeah,
I'm just playing. I'm just messing.
but yeah, I mean, hey, Edgar Allan Poe. I love. He's uh, he's fantastic, man. Um,
Good guy, real
I've,
good guy. That's what everyone says about him.
I've always
He's
liked
a
a lot
real
of his
slow guy.
poetry.
No, I thought this was fun to kind of dig back into Edgar Allan Poe. I was kind of saying to you earlier in the week, um, I've always enjoyed Edgar Allan Poe, but I think it's been some time since I've really read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's poems, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I've read like so much, especially recently, that I kind of I still hold him in high esteem, but
Mm-hmm.
I just there's like so many
Maybe it's
more
because
poets that have
he's
blown my mind since then, you know?
maybe it's because he's an early poet. He is sort of
Yeah.
early in the American canon, but
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah.
he has been described as juvenile over the years.
Mm, mm,
Similar criticisms were levied at Sylvia Plath actually as well.
yeah. And I kind of felt that way about Sylvia Plath, and actually I appreciated digging deeper into her, works when we because I never really read her as much. I'd read several poems, a handful of times, but I didn't get into uh, as deep into it as I did, here previously.
Mm. I don't, so maybe there's something about sort of the whole, emotionally torn up, uh, gothic sort of creepiness that kind of appeals to teenagers. I can see that it kind of appeals to young adults,
Yeah,
and maybe that's why some people find it a bit juvenile.
probably, yeah, because there is this like sense of like feeling different or,
Feeling different, feeling odd, and there's senses of
yeah.
powerlessness,
Mm,
just like
mm,
in Edgar Allan Poe's poem that I read, and a lot of Sylvia Plath's work, and a lot of the whole you know Gothic, suburban Gothic, Southern Gothic. There's this notion that you're kind of stuck there. We're stuck in
yeah,
this sort of Southern Gothic or Gothic situation, and
yeah. Also, also in our kind of culture, like you have like emo, and you have Hot Topics, and Spencer's gift stores and stuff like that, like in every mall, across America.
mm,
And that's sort of paint, sort of, I think sort of colors our, perception of, some of these authors. Also, you learn about them when you're younger. You tend to, people tend to go into those phases of, whether it's like Nirvana or it's My Chemical Romance or,
Right.
something like that. When you're in your, teenage years, your angsty years, and, Edgar Allan Poe and Sylvia Plath, like they speak to that.
Mm,
Um, and I think in many ways, like Edgar Allan Poe, as like the poem that I had read, there in many of his short stories, many of his writing, you do have to kind of dig a little bit, but some of it, like the Dream Within a Dream, are fairly accessible, like for most people,
mm,
to some extent. There might be
right.
maybe a word or two in there where you're not too sure of, but
Yeah, yeah. A lot of his writing, a lot of his writing is pretty accessible, and you might have to research a little bit, but that is kind of part of his charm, because like we were just talking about, he's read in schools a lot.
hmm
We sort of read him in school a lot, and yes, Edgar Allan Poe, like he's one of these artists, or he's one of these poets that really has legs, like we're like all of his work can just it's just it just it has this presence, maybe it has a presence in the American canon, and you know um which Edgar Allan Poe, he himself has become a part of that American canon,
yeah,
especially
yeah,
times right like now, right around Halloween,
yes, exactly. We are in spooky season,
right. Hold on to your
and
hats, ladies and gentlemen.
in Baltimore, um, coffee shops around this time are said to be, um, there'll be sightings of Edgar Allan Poe, because he actually was a fan of pumpkin spice,
Really?
and so the smell, they say the aroma, brings him out. So bakeries, coffee shops, you get sightings of him this time of year.
It's like we're scrolling through Instagram and you see a picture of me like at this coffee shop. I'm like, do you know what coffee shop that is? That's the coffee shop that has the ghost of Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe is like, it's almost like
No.
it's almost like if someone says, that's the ship of Redbeard the pirate or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
But you want to
I'm
talk about the gothic genre? You want to know what's something that's great, and I liked this a lot when I was a kid, that subverted the gothic genre in a fun, fresh way?
Scooby Doo.
Ah, how did you get it? You got it right off the bat. You got
Right?
it right
Oh,
off
is
the
that what you're
bat.
gonna say? Oh,
I was gonna say,
I was just joking.
but no, Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo.
Yeah. Yeah.
It subverts the gothic genre in a fun, fresh way, as opposed to
hmm
everything being all creepy and dark, and it's like, have some kids in this bright colored van, and you know, um, they'll
In
just solve
Columbus,
the
Ohio.
mystery.
You know.
Was that where it took place? I thought it was all over the
hmm
country. Our
No, it was based in Columbus.
Scooby Doo was?
hmm
Oh wow, I didn't know Scooby Doo was based in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until later on. I didn't know that as a child.
It's
But
kind of
yeah,
weird because Columbus, Ohio, you got all those old ass buildings there, and like kind of ended up because remember Scooby Doo, there's like everything's like old and run down,
hmm
and it's kind
So
of interesting how like by the time like Edgar Allan Poe was writing, it was actually the first opportunity for America to have like stuff that was starting to get kind of old. You know, by the year 1800, stuff was finally getting really old to the point where it was getting kind of spooky and scary.
well, imagine too. I mean, that's before the Civil War, so all those cities in the South were still there.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. It is
So it'd
kind of
be kind of interesting to see what the
right.
old South would have looked like.
But I mean, maybe like I think the burning down of the South kind of lended to the whole Southern Gothic kind of thing, like the destruction of the South.
Mm,
Because they could say the South really. Some could say the South still hasn't recovered from the destruction of the Civil War. Like the South never
right.
recovered.
I know. I don't think Atlanta will ever get to where it once was.
But just like as far as like the cultural powerhouse. But
Hmm. Hmm.
maybe in one day, but it's like just for years the South was sort of looked at as being backwards and slow, and but it got it was literally burned to the ground. So
Yeah, I mean I mean that's how when I grew up until I moved there. That's really what I heard.
right,
And then when I got I now I've been in the South, I haven't heard anyone say that.
really.
Now I'm just yeah. It's like since I got here, I mean I no one's really seems to say that anymore. I don't know.
Well, yeah, man. Edgar
Well,
Allan
hey, Edgar
Poe.
Allan Poe. Who
Yeah, I
and
guess
wait, who do we have next week? Next week is oh remind me, is it Kerouac?
I think. Let me check real quick. Okay, yeah, next week is Kerouac.
Yeah,
So yeah, next week we
so
have
that'll be
Jack.
fun. We'll see if we find any short poems for that one.
Maybe we might have to do an excerpt,
Yeah, right. Yeah, we might actually have to.
or both of us do an excerpt of the same poem, and we both do it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to we're gonna have to look into that. That'll be fun. That'll be
Yeah,
fun.
we'll think of something. But Edgar Allan Poe,
Hmm.
to be honest, I thought we'd kind of go a bit longer,
Mm.
but I guess we kind of just jump right into it.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, how much? How much do you wanna?
I don't know, but I just some of our episodes have been. I guess we just ended up. I guess maybe we agree on more with Edgar Allan Poe.
We're unsatisfied here, folks. We're not happy. We need more. We need Mo Poe.
Edgar Allan,
Poe, Poe, Poe.
give me a P.
What does that spell?
But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Hey, I
hey,
mean,
we
you
did
know,
it. We did the darn
for
thing.
all you kids at home, MC Lars, several songs about Edgar Allan Poe,
Oh
and
man,
if you want to learn a little bit more, just look them up on YouTube or something.
Google him.
Spotify, I think too. Yeah.
His, I mean, what else? What I mean, yeah. Hey,
I mean, what
what
else
else
can you
can we
say? I
say?
mean, if you want to see one of the preeminent, writers on Edgar Allan Poe, I mean, listen to MC Lars, and
Mm.
he'll uh he'll give you that
That's another
Poyo.
thing. There are a lot of like song versions of his poetry. A lot of his poetry has been turned into songs, and I mean,
Hmm.
like we said, his poetry has legs.
Well, he was the song. He was the songster.
He's one of the
That's what the Europeans referred to him as.
right.
He's a music man.
The musicality in the Raven is it's almost shocking how anyone could come up with
I know the Raven's insane, but I also Annabelle Lee
that. Right.
one of the most is got to be one of the most beautiful.
Or
And isn't that
and
so much like even like Nirvana, or someone like that, where it's like this dark theme, but it's sung so happily or beautifully,
right.
that's like kind of the whole,
Or
you know.
or even the Misfits.
Mm-hmm. Yep, totally.
Glenn Danzig. Singing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Bellowing
Yeah, I
out
don't
these
know.
beautiful songs.
Could you have the Misfits without Edgar Allan Poe? I don't know.
I don't know. And
Maybe,
also,
maybe not.
I mean, Edgar. I mean, even that poem "To Helen." Have you read that one?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a beauty one where I think that's where he's talked about like the beauty that is Greece and the grandeur that is Rome or something like that.
Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, so hey, definitely got legs on old Edgar Allan.
EAP. It's been me,
Well, hey, my name's James,
Justin.
and this has been Verse Take.
Verse Take
Did we even
episode. What
say
is this? 6, 7?
this? Yeah, I think this is 7. This is the
Halloween.
Halloween
Halloween
episode.
edition.
And I guess we could talk about a little bit about Halloween. I'd like trick or treat as a kid.
I think it's best we just end it here. I don't want to get into
Right,
that.
right. Justin's family didn't let him trick or treat.
No sweets.
Well, hey,
All
it was
fun and
for
no play. Yeah.
makes Justin a little dull boy.
Yep.
But hey, well, yeah. So hey, well, it's been spooky season. Happy Halloween, everybody, and
Yep.
you know,
Stay
take
safe
it
out there. Check your candy. Don't eat it. If it's been tampered with, or do.
right,
See what happens.
right, because people are putting their drugs in random
Right.
children's candy.
I know. I know. I mean, that's what I want to know. I'm like, who's giving out free drugs out here?
Right, yeah,
Just
exactly. Just
I got, I
yeah,
got, I got just excess drugs. I got all these drugs laying around. I just thought
in
maybe
the
I'd throw them in candies.
in the 90s they told us that random people would offer us drugs. When did
I know. People were
that
supposed
shit
to just be
happen?
giving out that, and that is actually one of the quiet signs of inflation. In the 90s, people had so many drugs, they're just giving them out.
Hey kid, you want a joint? Sure.
Yeah, they had more than enough. They
Right.
had so much they didn't know what to do with it. They're just offering it to people.
Putting in Halloween candy and
They couldn't
Thanksgiving
sell this. They
turkeys.
couldn't sell this stuff.
Right.
Now, I
I
mean, you
said
got people on the street begging for them.
it's like why would I buy it? Next week my son's gonna have a whole bag full.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know. My dad used to wait he did PCP every year on Halloween because he just waited for me to bring my candy
Yo,
home.
and my dad used to check my candy. He would go through and just like pocket a, he would just pocket it and just he just take it. Like I'm like he just
Like
look
that
at it
Reese's that this Reese's cup doesn't. I don't know, son.
like I better get all. I think I need all the Reese's this year.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I saw it on the news. They're putting stuff in Reese's.
I think the first costume I ever wore, I think I was a pirate. I remember being a pirate as a kid.
You were,
I'm still a pirate, but
yeah, you were a pirate. Yeah, yeah. I think I was Frankenstein, but
that's pretty cool.
hmm
Frankenstein.
yeah, yeah. It was legit. I had my whole face painted.
Well, Halloween, Edgar Allan Poe, spooky season, verse take.
It's been spooky.
I'll see you guys later. We'll see you
Until
guys
next time.
next time in the world of poetry. Like, comment, subscribe, get down in there, take it easy on each other, and start mixing it up. You know.
Yeah. Don't fight anymore, guys. Don't fight in those comments. It really makes me sad when you guys fight.
All right, take care. Another
Yep.
day. Peace. All right, that was a great success. Fantastic,
Yeah.
man.
What a great success.
What are you
I'm
gonna do?
serious. Yeah, I don't like it when our fans fight in the comments.
I hate it.
I'm like,